William Faulkner was an American writer who studied at the University of Mississippi. He wrote novels, short stories, screenplays, poetry, essays, and a play. Some of his most notable works are, well, not surprising given the topic of the presentation, The Sound and the Fury, As I Lay Dying, Light in August, Absalom, Absalom, and The Rose for Emily. Several of his stories are set in the fictional Yoknapatawpha County, which is based on Lafayette County, Mississippi. The Sound and the Fury is also set here. In 1949, he won the Nobel Prize in Literature for his powerful and artistically unique contribution to the modern American novel, and he also was awarded with the Pulitzer Prize multiple times. What is modernism? Modernism in the fine arts is a break with the past and the concurrent search for new forms of expression. Modernism fostered a period of experimentation in the arts from the late 19th to the mid-20th century, particularly in the years following World War I. In modernist literature, we find disillusionment with the world, fragmentary images, and allusions. The stream of consciousness technique is used to provide the readers with a more complete interpretation of an individual's mind. To represent the full richness, speed, and subtlety of the mind at work, the writer incorporates snatches of incoherent thought, ungrammatical constructions, and free association of ideas, images, and words at the pre-speech level. It can also be viewed as an internal monologue. In the book, events of the past and concurrent events mix together, allowing us to experience the responses in fragments. The final section is intended to aid the reader in understanding the Compson story. The choice of Dilsey as a character in the last section is important because she has been there with the family from the beginning, but we will discuss this along the other characters. The following themes and motifs will help us to understand the book as we go forward with the presentation. To name them, it's corruption of Southern aristocratic values, death and resurrection, failure of language and narrative, time, order and chaos, shadows, water, and Quentin's watch, just to name a few. Here on this slide you can see the members of the Compson family who will be the most relevant to my presentation. I will not go into detail about every character from the book. The center of the story is the Compson family, so I'm excluding some of the servants and people they encounter in the novel. The Compson family originates from Scotland. They settled in America and managed to come into significant positions throughout the decades in the Southern aristocracy. The family had a governor and a general, who was not very successful since he lost both of his battles. Also, the family's male members have the tendency to deteriorate the family status. Some of them were gamblers, others sold the property. With the grandfather, the general, dead, it was up to Jason, the father, to save the family's status. Jason married Caroline and had 4 children: Jason, Quentin, Candace, and Benjamin, born Murray. The book is narrated by the point of view of the 3 sons. Except for Quentin's chapter, all of them are set in Easter. Easter is about the death and resurrection of Jesus Christ. The Compsons are facing the final stage of the family's disintegration. Their past relevance and honor is no longer present. The family's only chance was the promise of Quentin's education and career at Harvard. The old virtues of an aristocratic Southern family were biblical Christianity, good manners, having an extended family, and anti-materialism, just to name a couple. We will see how the family members each abandon these values. Katie got pregnant from a young tomboy called Dalton. The problem was that the pregnancy was unwed, meaning that the child was not lawful, technically making it a bastard. In an attempt to save the family name, they married her to Herbert, who later realized that the child to be expected was in fact not his own and divorced her. Herbert was a banker, so he offered the job to Jason before, which he obviously lost with the divorce. This was another serious blow to the family. The Compsons decided to keep the child and name her after Quentin, the Harvard student. Caddy's name is no longer allowed to be uttered in the house. Benji bore Maury Compson. Benji turned out to be mentally ill, making him the first black sheep of the family. He was widely neglected, and his only source of affection was Caddy. They used to play together all the time outside. For this reason, Benji associates her with the smell of trees, since he is unable to conceptualize his relationship with Caddy like a normal person would. When the child Caddy muddied her clothes while playing in the stream, Benji got really upset because he couldn't smell the trees like he usually does. This event, the muddy clothes, foreshadows what is about to happen in the future, namely Caddy losing her virginity and getting pregnant with a child of Dalton Ames. Caddy was all wet and muddy behind, and I started to cry, and she came and squatted in the water, said Benji. In order for Quentin to go to college, they had to sell another portion of the family property. This time they sold Benji's pasture, which was later converted to a golf course. He kept running up the fence to watch people hitting the golf balls, which reminded him perhaps of what he lost because the family had him castrated in order to prevent the family bloodline from further deterioration. He also could be usually found at the gates looking at girls passing by because they reminded him of Caddy. I got undressed and I looked at myself and I began to cry. Hush, Luster said. Looking for them ain't going to do no good. They are gone. Benji's castration. Benji is accompanied by Luster, the child of the servant Dilsey. After Caddy's leaving, they are the only ones taking care of him. Dilsey even buys him a birthday cake from her own money, which is not much, and takes him to church. This also applies for the rest of the children. It really was Dilsey instead of Mrs. Compson who brought them up, since Caroline was so obsessed with herself, being a hypochondriac who relied in everything on Dilsey as well. When the servant family is sent away by Jason in the end, Benji will be sent to the mental institute of Jefferson, while he will keep living on like he used to before, since the fire is the same everywhere. Quentin, the Harvard student. Quentin was the family's promise, and he himself deeply believed in this. He was deeply invested in restoring the family's honor. This placed enormous pressure on Quentin and contributed to his disturbed state of mind. His love for his sister had great influence over his mind as well. Upon learning of Caddy's fate, his mental health quickly deteriorates, and from his account, we learn of the path that led him to suicide. He tried to save her by claiming to his father that the child was in fact his and not Dalton's, but the father refused to accept this explanation. Quentin at one point hoped that at least if there was an afterlife, they would be together in hell if they committed incest, which they didn't. Reality and fantasy are hard to distinguish from each other in Quentin's account. His insanity makes his chapter similar to Benji's, as Faulkner intensely relies on stream of consciousness here as well. Quentin is obsessed with time. This helps the reader to at least understand the timeline of events happening, more or less. He was gifted a watch by his father which was a sort of heirloom, because it was passed on from father to son for generations. His intention was to provide some sort of relief to Quentin, but he achieved the exact opposite. I give you the mausoleum of all hope and desire. I give it to you not that you may remember time, but that you might forget it now and then for a moment, and not spend all of your breath trying to conquer it. Because no battle is ever won, he said. They are not even fought. The field only reveals to man his own folly and despair, and victory is an illusion of philosophers and fools. Clocks slate time. Time is dead as long as it is being clicked off by little wheels. Only when the clock stops does time come to life. The father's words as he gave the watch to Quentin. Eventually, Quentin drowns himself with the flat iron weights the day his watch stopped working. Jason Compson, the only Bascom son and the new head of family. After the father passed away due to alcoholism, Jason becomes the head of the Compson family. He is a deeply cynical and materialistic person. He attended the state university in order to become a cotton salesman. He learned how to grade and sell cotton. Just to see how cynical Jason's mindset is, let's take a look at this excerpt from the book. When people act like Negroes, no matter who they are, the only thing to do is to treat them like Negroes. He hates his sister Caddy and drives her away when she wants to visit her daughter, Miss Quentin. Jason is his acting guardian, but he neglects the child because he hates her as well, because she is considered to be the reason, along with her mother, of losing that promising bank job. Once a bitch, always a bitch, what I say. This is Jason about Caddy and her daughter. He takes all the money Caddy sends to her daughter for compensation. He's not spending it, but is hoarding it in his room in a lockbox. The checks are intended for the mother, so he decides to forge fake checks found at the old bank that was closed before. Caroline believes that she, in fact, is destroying the checks because Jason convinced her that they don't need Caddy's or anyone's help, since Jason can provide for the family. The scheme goes on until the day Quentin steals the money from his room and runs off with a salesman wearing a red tie. It was not only her money, but Jason saved $3,000 as well. The end of the Compsons. Events leading up. I've seen the first and the last, Dilsey said. I saw the beginning and now I saw the ending. This was said by Dilsey at the very end of the book after Miss Quentin's departure. Just to recap the story, I tried to put the events in order. Our story began with the sick grandmother who eventually died. Benji turned out to be mentally challenged while he was a young boy, which led to the decision of renaming him from the original Maury to Benjamin in order not to show Uncle Mary in bad light. Caddy got pregnant from the boy, Dalton Ames. Not much later, her mother arranged a marriage with Herbert Head, who disowned her after finding out about the pregnancy. Quentin couldn't put up with the family's loss of honor and the loss of Caddy. He fantasized about killing Herbert, but eventually he took his own life. The father then passed away due to alcoholism, and from this point Jason takes hold of family matters. The Compsons decided to bring Miss Quentin up. When she becomes a teenager, she takes what is owed to her and runs away from the family, leaving everything behind. Caroline dies, and along with her the only obstacle which stopped Jason from transforming things to his liking. He sends Dilsey and her children away and admits Benji into a mental hospital. He finally sells the remainder of the family estate.